but DEI director at the district level. So I'm going to let her do her introductions, and then she's going to tell you what she's been up to and what they're doing at the district and high school levels.
Well, thank you, Nicole, for the invitation, and I'm very glad to see all of you. Nice to see our partners of PREC and PADC. Adam, I didn't get to hear you say happy Thursday, so I fully admit I'm missing that announcement. You probably have already done it. So I would disagree, Nicole, a little bit around I'm not so new. I've only been here since December. So while many people are saying, holy cow, you're paying attention and sort of getting the lay of the land, I feel on a daily basis I get bumped by something, trying to figure out left hand, right hand, who said what. I'm lucky I still remember Adam's name. And then, of course, he said, Dr. B, I'm out of here because you got here. And so, my feelings are hurt a little bit, but I'm starting to get over it. So I'll be all right, I think. So there's a couple of things that you need to know about me, because I think people believe that because of my experience I would come with a bag of tricks and we would all just get to work and go do something. And what I know is that every single school district and every single community is dramatically different. The school district reflects the culture in which it's grounded, and therefore strategies and ideas and things that might work in one school district may not work in another. And so one of the things that I've been doing, and thankful for the opportunity, is I've been meeting groups like yours, right? Today is the first day we get to meet. And so I've been meeting groups and people all across the community, trying to learn why we do what we do, and trying to figure out, because it is the good news, that the school board went out on a limb. And I still am so impressed by that fact. And I'm not sure you realize what they did when they wrote their equity policy and voted it in and put it in place and said, we shall. Right? Policy says we shall. And so part of people say, why would you come to Piedmont? I mean, well, it's cold in New York. I mean, that's number one. But no. But number two was really being impressed with the fact that a school board would step out on that limb and say, you know what, we are going to become that school district. We're going to become an anomaly in the United States because we believe we can. And I say this all the time, and I know Diana and Sheila just laugh at me because I say it all the time. And the biggest difference is you have organizations like PADC, you have organizations like PREC, and we don't have to go out and reinvent something because you already have people doing the work already in the community at large. And so I see myself in lots of roles. Obviously, I hope that Adam would see me eventually as a coach, right? So if he's still here, he has an issue, he wants to call me and say, let's tackle this, or what would that be? Or we're working on a curriculum audit and curriculum study. I think we're headed into something that might not be quite what we're looking for. How can you help us do that work, etc.? We're studying our data, and you have to understand where I've come from. I mean, one of my last districts had 33,000 students. So when people say, yeah, we have an achievement gap, and I say, how can that be? There's only 12 of us that look like me in the district, so how can there be an achievement gap? When there's only 14 or 15 of us spread out all over the district, how is that even possible? So as we study the system, and never forget, the system is designed to get what it's getting. So as I start to pay attention to the system, I say, all right, so what are the things that keep kids where they are? What are the access points that we're not sort of gravitating toward? Why aren't more members of the African American community in Piedmont schools as opposed to taking them to private schools? So I look like a cocker spaniel most of the time, just going, why? Why? Because I don't have the answers. But what I do know, and I do have the answer, we can't do this by ourselves. So I appreciated the board going on that limb, but I know that we can't do this without the city. We can't do this without PADC. We can't do this without PrEP. We cannot do this without the parent committees. It's impossible. And so, yes, I have lots of ideas in my head, right? I have tools in my toolbox that may work, but I also know that from the ground up, we can build something better. So that's what I've been doing, is trying to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then, of course, since the district is still moving, right, I read New York Times articles and start to wrestle with, so what does this mean? Or I met with student group the last time I was here, and there's a dramatic difference in trust around some of the BIPOC students that I've met and the system as a whole. So you have to keep asking the question, so why? And out of that, I believe like the board believes. I think we can do that district. I think the press will be here pretty soon saying, holy smokes, how'd you do that? How'd you do that so quickly? And then we get to talk about everybody. Everybody is in this mix. Everybody plays a role in this. So right now, I have a job description, sort of, and we're building it while the plane is flying. I am probably going to be in charge of curriculum and instruction. I have a degree in that, and so that's where I like to live my life. It's work I love, enjoy doing. I do, like I said, I think I'll play a coaching role for leadership. I also have to figure out what the DEI design of training and ongoing professional learning has to be for everyone in the organization. I also know that our parents are eager to say, you know what, we really want to talk about, how do I talk about this with my kids? Or how do I wrestle with this when Fox News is on all day at my house? How can I use the compass, and you'll learn about the tool, but how can I use the compass to really pay attention to where I am from an emotional perspective or a thinking perspective or a moral perspective as I engage in a difficult conversation? How do I begin to be open to hearing from folks like Shakti Butler or forgive me, I lost the author's name for Three Mothers. How do I engage in that conversation when I've never had to, B, I really want to, and C, I'm scared to death. Because Dr. V, I'm scared you're going to think ill of me somehow because I'm going to ask you some question. How can you help me do that? Those are the kinds of things that I'm hearing about. Those are the kinds of things that I've been thinking about. And that's the kind of conversation that we're starting to have. Pretty soon, the school board's going to get the first glimpse at focus group data, right? They've been talking with folks, Gitanjali from curricular. I'm so sorry, I forgot the company, and she'll kill me later. But she's been holding focus groups. That's why they come out. There's themes there. How do we tackle those themes? What is the role of the community in that? The school district, leadership, teachers, staff, etc. So we're going to start to talk about what those themes are and can we enact them. We have things in the LCAP, I know you've heard of that dreadful monster that the state requires, right? And so there are things we're required to do with that, but in requirement comes the opportunity for innovation. And that's where I think we are in a different place. I think we have the skill set to be far more innovative than other districts that I've been in. And part of that is because in other districts I've been in, we've been under the thumb of the state. So there is a difference, right? So when you're having to jump through hoops to please the state is a whole different ballgame than building innovation to serve our families. kids, it's good for us. And so I think that's sort of it in a nutshell. And I'm open for questions, although I can't see anybody's faces, so I'm really wondering if people are here or if they're just in their jammies and don't want me to see them. Which, hi, how are you? Which I understand, I understand that. But I would love questions. If we have time, Nicole, if I didn't hog up too much.
No, we have time for questions. So, and I see Stacy's already got her hand raised. So, Stacy, I'm giving the mic to you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, everyone, for your presentation this morning. So one of the things that I'd like to bring your attention to and have a little bit of a focus on is that really diving down into some of the curriculum that I think really is impacting children. As a matter of fact, my daughter was sitting on my bed last night asking me, what did I think about Mississippi burning being shown in her history class? And why couldn't there be more if we're going to talk a little bit about civil rights in the curriculum? Why can't we talk more about some of the positive things? Because, it was very difficult for her not to because the teacher did give her an option of not being in the class, but she felt still that wasn't something that she wanted to do, but it was really difficult. And so how can some of the material that's being presented be so a little bit more inclusive and not traumatic? Like in watching actual lynching, she said maybe there could have been more of a discussion around that instead of them having to actually view that. So these are some of the nitty-gritties that I'd like to see addressed from that perspective, because I think that there's a huge opportunity around that, especially within history curriculum.
I agree 100%. I always caution faculty when they are moving into films as a point of learning, because you do have to wrap the context around it. And of course, I have no idea what happened. Was it, if we're going to watch the movie, I don't know that. But I agree with you that you do have to pay attention, wrap the context around it, talk about the rationale. And I really am starting to encourage teachers. I don't know why we're showing whole films anyway. We show clips. So I still can't figure out why we're showing entire films unless the entire context of the film is key to the course. And I don't know that yet, Dr. Hunt, but it's something that obviously that's something that I think about a lot. Thank you.
When you're looking at all of these, curriculum, do you take students, like what Stacy was saying, we as parents may not know this. We only know about it through Stacy's daughter. So do you have plans to talk to the students about what they're learning and some of the curriculum that they may see as problematic?
The students would be a part of the process, because one of the things that I usually will create is a student advisory group around DEI. So once I figure out how I can do that, obviously I can't do this at this juncture, the year is over. And before Adam escapes, I would ask him, what that process might look like before the middle school and high school, and how do I organize that? Again, I don't know how that works in Piedmont, but once that student advisory group is in place, that's exactly the kind of work that they would do, whether we're talking about curriculum, whether we're talking about use of time, whether we're talking about the feedback from the focus groups. All of that goes through the lens of the students as well as the DEI council.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, Sheila, are you raising your hand? Yeah, Sheila.
Thank you. I guess kind of following on that, Dr. V, I'm curious, like a lot of your work, there's what you need to do, there's so much attention that needs to be given to so many different things. But one of the things that I've really learned to take into heart since I've been in this work here specifically in Piedmont is the leadership that our students offer us on these issues. Like, it's just incredible, how comfortable and brave and sort of they step into these spaces where they can talk about things that we are learning how to talk about. they have an understanding of it. And so I'm wondering, like, aside from the student advisory council that you're talking about, how will you maybe not you personally, but how will you create like a system or a process or stakeholders to stay connected to the students and continually get their feedback and their thoughts about, their needs, their ideas about leadership? How will you do that? What's your thinking there?
Can you, whoopsie, I lost you. There you are. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like in general, how you will set up a system to stay connected to the students on issues of racial equity in the school. The students who are stepping forward to share their ideas, to provide feedback about their experience. Where is that data captured? And how is it leveraged? Because you've talked a lot about being a data-driven leader, which I think is great, right? Because that kind of data is really important to people's understanding of what's actually happening in our community. So, what are some of your ideas on how you'll capture that information and use it?
Well, and again, I'm still trying to figure out who holds it, because I'm not clear about that yet. But one of the things that I've done in every trip that I've come is I've actually met with all the student activist groups that are in the high school and I missed one in the middle school that is doing some work. So I have met with them. This upcoming trip will be twice. Two of the three trips I've met with them, and what they are tackling is thinking that exact thing through, Sheila, because I believe that I can be at each of the student groups at least once if they meet, let's say 3 times a month, I could be there at least once. That I would be there to gather that information. I would also expect them to be representatives on the advisory that I have. So someone from all those groups has to be on the advisory, and then we also pick from random folks in each of the buildings. So I think that's one of the ways that I'll be able to do that. And then I am really thinking about, I used to call them advocates. And anybody that wanted an email from me would send their email address. And then the advocates would get an email blast on a Friday. Here's where we are, here's what we're thinking, here's where we're going. And these are the talking points you need to talk about in the community at large. And then anybody in the community, students included, can be part of that communication. That's a previous tool that I've been able to use. And then just being visible. I mean, we're too small to not be in schools every other second. Now, Adam doesn't want to hear that, and they don't really want me in their buildings every other second. But in order to access the students' groups, I know that's what's going to have to happen. And so that's what I would do. And then, of course, parent clubs, and this is where, Nicole, I know in the email I got confused a little bit. I understand that each one of the clubs has a president or something. And so what I was trying to figure out was how do I meet with all the parent club presidents together, right? Because we have to do this, and this is great. But if we're thinking about, so what is the global role and interest of the parents? I need to have a vehicle, a tool in which I can meet everyone. And it's the same thing with the student groups, which is why I'm building that council. You're welcome.
Yeah, I have to imagine that every district is, like you said earlier, very different, and you are learning how our district works. And you know that our parent community is very involved, and so each of the schools does have a parent club, and this is a good tool for or conduit for getting a hold of parents and getting information from and to parents.
It's the from that's important to me, Nicole. It's hearing from parents. And please, thank you for the opportunity to be able to be introduced to you. So I appreciate what we're doing here. I appreciate the opportunity. but eventually I'm looking for a reciprocal relationship.
Sure.
Did that make
Yeah.
sense? Okay.
Yes. This is it'll be a good avenue for that.
Yeah.
Hari, I know you had a question in the chat. Do you want to just ask it yourself?
Sure.
Okay.
So, Dr. V, I had a question about how anti-racism programs can be consistent with the race blindness mandate that's part of the California Constitution. So there's Article 1, Section 31A that says the state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. So I put in a link to the California Constitution in the chat. So I wanted to know your thoughts around how you're staying within the confines of the California Constitution.
Well, I'm not hiring anyone. I'm not contracting anyone. And in public education, if we're going to ensure that our students have success, equity is going to be key. Equity meaning that the students have what they need in order for them to be successful. If we have our student body in which your Black students are saying my educational experience is remarkably different, therefore we have to find out what we need in order for them to be successful and how we support them in doing that. I don't see how that works against this code. So I don't see it how it works against this. I see this work as inclusive as opposed to a program. It's not about going to buy a book or a movie or a toy or a doll. It's not about a program. It's about a way of life, how we live, learn, work with all of our students to ensure that everyone not only has access but can thrive. And when I hear from, some students that they're top of the class and they still fall apart every week because of the pressure to get a grade. When I hear when I hear that students remark about an African American female student saying she smells because of her hair products, I know that we have a way of life that we have to help our students live better. Because everybody here expects their student to be a CEO of something somewhere. And they're going to be CEO of something somewhere with people who look and sound like you and me. And so I don't see this as going against that. I, in fact, see us as helping our students be able to thrive because we're going to create these opportunities. So I don't see a disconnection between meeting the Constitution of California and helping our students thrive.
Okay, thank you.
I think if I may, just for 1 second, on the heels of that, I would love to maybe level set for the group also, like what are we talking about when we talk about anti-racism? What does that actually mean, right? Like it's, as Dr. V said, a way of living or a way of thinking as we actively try to dismantle racism. So what are the guiding principles of an anti-racist program or anti-racism? It's education, right? Like we can't change things that we don't understand or know about. So committing to be educated, being intentional, having an open heart and open mind, and seeing the humanity in other people, right? So much of our education or socialization has involved stereotypes. So seeing people for the individuals and the qualities that they have, and having empathy and love. So I feel like at least at PADC, when we say we are an organization with a mission that's grounded in anti-racism, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about solving the problem of racism through that lens. So I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Sheila. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time because I know it's been a long morning if you've been hanging in there through the principal's coffee and this. But I know Stacy's got, I think, her hand up. We'll take maybe one more question. Stacy?
And I put my email, somebody asked me for my email. I put it in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess I wanted to just respond in kind of like level set, having been in Piedmont for quite a number of years. When I think of racism, I think of it as, it's interesting because my daughter always asks me a ton of really difficult questions and, really helping her to really understand when people use the difference of racism and biases and what all of that means. And so in my mind, racism to me is when you take and you use your power to oppress people who belong to a protected group. And
Right.
so for me, the conversation really about really trying to change people is when harm is occurring to children who are coming to school to get an education just like everybody else. And so having had two children, my son who is now a junior in college and my daughter who is now a junior in high school, in doing the work that I do, because I actually do a lot of work around equity and inclusion in my day job, part of this conversation is really to mitigate that harm that is being done. It's not to take anything from anybody.
Right.
And so I want to be really clear about why these conversations are taking place. It is because there is harm that is taking place that actually puts the school district at risk. And how do we have these conversations so that my daughter, she just wants to come to school and have friends and enjoy her sports like everyone else. We're not saying, I think that when people go to their house, they are entitled to have their opinions, they're entitled to have their values. The one thing that concerns me is when my daughter comes home and she's so sad, or, things are said to her like, well, why did you change your hairstyle? Did you have to wash it? And it's said in front of her, in front of a classroom. It's like, I understand your curiosity, but that is not the appropriate place to be asking a child that, and just understanding that more kids are more sensitive to that than others. So, I could go on, but I want to be extremely clear about why this topic was so important in this day and time, because it is a conversation in which people are being harmed. And I feel that, kids have a right and people have a right to live their lives and to have choices, but to be harmed is a different thing to me.
Agreed.
Thanks, Stacy. I appreciate everybody's comments and everybody's work in this area and just getting, a little window into what's being done. And I know Dr. V had put her email in the chat, and I'm sure she would welcome, any feedback that you have. And we will be working with her to make this, like we said, a two-way street, that she's not just giving information to us, but that we give information to her too as we learn and grow in all of this together. So I appreciate everybody's time this morning. Our next Parent Club meeting is scheduled for April Fool's Day, April 1st, 9:15 on Zoom. And if anybody has anything in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to Sarah and I. So thank you, and everybody have a good morning.